Hello, everybody, and welcome to this spoiler review for episode 9 of Andor. Nobody's listening. This is my solo spoiler review that I like to do in my reaction right after I watch an episode here of the show. You know, I love the show. I love Andor. Spoken about it many times on my social media and on my solo and Geek Buddies reviews. How much I enjoy this show and the slow burn aspect of the show. And I think after this episode, we are getting into full on fire mode for sure. So much to talk about, so much to dive into here. The increasing feeling of what it's like to have fascists in charge of people's lives in the Empire. We're getting the full weight of it now in this episode in ways that are pretty harrowing and unsettling. And I don't know, almost feels like there's no hope, so to speak, to use a term that's been used many times in Star Wars. So we see the walls kind of closing in on Andor. We see the walls kind of closing in on Mon Mothma, and we see the power of Dedra Miro expanding here as a fascist. You know, Denise Goff did a recent interview, and she spoke about how she approached doing this character of Dedra, or playing this character of Dedra Miro, and she said very clearly, fascists don't have a gender. And for me, I thought it'd be interesting to explore what it's like for a woman to become a fascist in this world. And certainly, depending on what side of the political aisle you're on, you can certainly feel that there are already female fascists in our country in your mind. You know what I'm saying? So this is a very interesting show, I think, that explores all of that. And we see some more with Cyril Karn and his belief in himself that he is unique and special. And although the stalking stuff may be a little uncomfortable, on the other side of it, he's not wrong in calling out Dedra and saying that she feels the same way he does. And I think there's a reason she doesn't put him in prison right off the bat. It's not about chances. There's something more that's going on here. All right, let's jump into this. Nobody's listening. This is from Toby Haynes yet again, continuing his directing of these episodes. And this is one that really speaks volumes, as I said, about the nature of fascism and how fascism can mess with people, can turn people into cattle, into numbers for sure. Let's deal with the Andor storyline in this entire episode. We start out with seeing him back with his crew doing his thing on Table 5, building these pieces of equipment for sure. We see that he's gotten to be a little more familiar with Kino Loy, with Andy Serkis's character, and that comes out in certain exchanges, certain interactions, him trying to kind of kiss his ass a little bit and curry favor with him on the floor as Olaf is struggling. We see that progress throughout the episode. We also see that Andor is kind of watching the guards and monitoring their movements and being aware of things. He comes in and takes out a panel when he goes on his walk. And in that panel, he is cutting something there, some kind of pipe or maybe some communication wire, whatever it is he's cutting there. And we see him monitoring the movement of people and the movement of the guards, and also talking with another prisoner there about how the weapons that they use, that they vibrate people or electrify people through the ground, don't work on moving objects. So that's going to be something that will come into play. I imagine you don't drop a big thing like that and not use it. That will come into play as the show goes along. But we see him now very fully into the mix here of all the prisoners, becoming friends with some of them, talking with some of them. With Kino here, it expands to the point that him and Kino are in their cells across from each other, and he is asking him questions about guards and stuff. Whereas Kino in the last episode was a bit of a hard ass and seemed like he was impenetrable. We're seeing the walls coming down a little bit, and that's the kind of journey that this particular episode goes on with Kino and Cassian, is the coming together of Kino and Cassian by the end of the episode. But where we're starting out here, Kino doesn't want any part of it. He's thinking about how many shifts he's got left. He doesn't want to get in trouble, doesn't want to get killed, doesn't want to have issues. Cassian is asking him how many guards are there on each level, because he needs that information in order to think about how to possibly escape and help as many people escape, or maybe cause a prison riot to try to turn this thing over. Kino doesn't want to give him the information, but we see as the episode goes along and the noose tightening here from the people above, and that eventually affects Olaf as he just succumbs to the work rate for someone at his age, ends up having a massive stroke. And before he does, we hear about this issue on level 2. We see them all in the tunnels, again, grasping the size and the weight of this place. We see them trying to communicate, trying to get words. Kino gets upset at one of the prisoners who's trying to communicate. I think Jumbek is his name, trying to communicate and send hand signals or sign language there to get some communication. And Kino's like, look, it takes days or weeks for us to get word about what's going on. And we see that some power goes out, and we hear about level 2. Something went on with level 2. Later on in the episode, we find out that 100 men were fried. And then, as I said, Olaf has that stroke, which brings in this med tech. Reciva, I think his name is. The med tech comes in, and Kino and Cassian question about level 2, and eventually he tells them that the Empire made a mistake, or the people running the prison made a mistake, because it's this idea, because they ended up putting someone back into the same section of the prison that they had, quote unquote, been released from. So basically the implication is that they lie to you that you're going to be done after you hit a certain number of shifts or a certain number of days, and that you're going to be free to keep you working towards a goal. But in the end, what they just do is move you to another place to work in that place and keep you working and keep you working and keep you working. So that is just that moment. The realization is finally enough for Kino to understand the situation that they are in and help Cassian by telling him there are 12 guards in every level. So this whole section is just harrowing in so many ways, for lack of a better term, because you're seeing that the people are involved in this as prisoners, and seeing the mundane nature of their everyday lives, and also this feeling that the people in charge of the prison, the people in charge in fascist states, they want to turn you into a number who's just working there. They want to create these fake goals for you, because as human beings, we're motivated by goals, we're motivated to achieve, we're motivated by that carrot on the stick. And by the time you realize that they're lying to you, when you get put back into another prison population, you're just absolutely broken. Your spirit is broken, because you realize there is no end to the cycle. You're essentially a rat on a wheel. That's what they turn everybody into in this place. So that is just mind breaking, to be honest with you, and soul crushing in this episode to see. So clearly now, if this starts to get around, they're going to try to figure this out. And maybe having this guy come back kind of caused problems at level 2, because people were already maybe figuring out ways to break out of the situation, seeing that they would eventually be released, but only to be sent back into another section of the prison to start all over again. Seeing that as possibly might have motivated them to fight back or implement their desires to break out. And that's why 100 of them were killed. So we don't know the full details, but that's what essentially comes through there from that med tech. So just so much here in the progressing of the relationship between Kino and Cassian. The guys on 5 there, Melshi there, all trying to take care of Olaf, because the older guy on the shift. And I have questions, does Olaf know that we just repeat? Has he been there for a while, or was he arrested later in life so that he's been there for such a long time? I don't know what the situation was with Olaf. You imagine if he had been sent from prison to from section of the prison to section of the prison to section of the prison, then he would he would tell them about the situation. But this could also be part of the new regulations, and I wonder if it is part of the new regulations, that they just kind of recycle you over and over again as a way to keep you contained in a box, in essence, and to never get out and do the work for the Empire, because you're just a cog in the wheel. And that is just heartbreaking and dehumanizing on so many levels. And speaking of dehumanizing, let's move over to what happens with Deidre and Bix. We see the episode begins right where we left off in the last episode, with Deidre there and Bix in the chair, and essentially Deidre turns on the fascism, turns on the torture dialogue and the torture tone of her voice. This is very reminiscent of Nazi stuff. We have a doctor there experimenting, in essence, on these prisoners to try to get information. You could call it waterboarding, you call it torture, whatever you want to say. Countries have used this to try to get information from captive people, and certainly having 2 white people do that to a person of color, you cannot ignore the imagery of that in that scene there. And Deidre just walking around and relishing. I saw some, initially we were kind of championing Deidre a little bit, like, okay, we get it, we shouldn't be cheering for an Empire person. But then again, all these dudes don't give her any kind of like credit, and she's pushing because she's right, and we don't want her to be to convince people that she's right, but we're also championing the fact that she is right. So there's a lot of confusing emotions. Well, I think all of that gets put to bed in this episode. She is definitely one of the evil ones on the Empire side. Her slow walking around, her in essence using her dialogue to tell Bix there's no point fighting back. look, you're just a business owner. You have no rebel activity. Look what I did to your boy, Pac. You don't want any of the smoke. You don't want anything, what I'm going to do to you. And Bix doesn't want to give her any of the information about Andor, about Luthen, essentially called the buyer, who Deidre calls Axis. And we hear that the doctor talks about Dr. Gorse, he explains what he's going to do, talks about a species of Disneytes, I think he says, that were massacred, and their choral or agonized pleading when they died, they recorded it. And apparently 3 of the people who recorded it went somewhat insane listening to their pleas or their pain as they screamed as they died. So Gorst and Bix, so Gorst and Deidre have isolated this down to where it's just the children screaming. So the hearing children screaming as they die in chorus is what they play in Bix's ears. Wow. I mean, talk about a show that is pulling no punches in the pew, pew, pew Star Wars universe. That is this show. Yeah, we've seen brutal stuff in Star Wars before. We've heard about billions of people dying on planets, but something specific, something personal like this, seeing the actual torture here, seeing the absolute mind fucking that they're doing to Bix and what they did to Pac earlier. I mean, that speaks volumes of the kind of evilness that we're dealing with here, the ruthlessness of this empire. And of course, it's very reminiscent of what you saw and heard about and read about in Nazi Germany. So seeing that come to life in the empire, which, by the way, the empire since A New Hope was essentially standing in for Nazi Germany. So I hope you're aware of that. Stormtroopers, hello. All of that is there to give you the imagery of Nazi Germany for sure. Let's see. We find out that Deidre gets the information from Bix eventually about everything. We find out that the other guy who was put in charge, the captain who was put in charge there by Blevin, wants to hang Pac as a lesson. And apparently Deidre has no issue with that. So that's further proof of the dehumanization that happens with people in power when they take over either places that are run by people that are have natives of people of color, or just overall when they take over any place, the kind of brutality that they want to implement in their rule. We hear that Bix did give her the information. They tracked the targeting unit to a rebel house operated by a rebel cell associated with Maya Pei. So we hear about her again. 2 times she's been mentioned. So wonder who she's going to be. They notice that Cassian is all through this stuff, and they talk about the fact that he was clean shaven, which is why and that he might have looked familiar to a couple of people who were there on Aldhani. So they're making the connection to Aldhani with Andor. Partagas is essentially hesitant to agree with this line of connection. But then when he hears about the shaved face and all of that for Andor, he goes along with it. But he seems a bit shaken. Now, I could be way off base. But everyone's been thinking that Cyril's going to turn or Deidre's going to turn. Wouldn't it be an incredible thing to find out that it's Partagas the whole time that has been kind of a double agent here along with Luthen? We hear about the fact that she left Marva alone because she wants to leave her as kind of bait for Andor to come back. And then we hear about a rebel pilot being picked up. This is after her and Cyril have their interaction, which we'll get to. Been picked up using a stolen Imperial masking unit. He's being held in a destroy off steer guard. She reports it to Partagas, and they go around the room wondering about what to do with this rebel pilot until Deidre herself says, well, why don't we have it, the ship have some kind of mechanical failure. We kill the pilot and then push it out there to drift with the space trash, so to speak. And this is a rebel pilot from Anto Krieger's group, who, of course, Anto Krieger was the one that Luthen was pitching to Saw Gerrera in the last episode. So was Saul right here to not be involved with this? We shall see. And they get the information that a raid was being planned for the power station at Spellhouse, which is exactly what Luthen was talking about in the last episode with Saw Gerrera. Deidre says they should kill the pilot, have it towed, and kill the pilot, push it out the space kind of trash there, and they'll have it towed to Kafrene without thinking that the Empire is involved in all of this. So a bit of subterfuge, a bit of, how can I say this? A bit of craftiness here being done by Deidre to put this in motion. And you can tell around the room, she is getting much more respect than she got at the beginning of this series. The guys are all listening to her. They're questioning her, but they're questioning her in ways to get information in order to get a better idea of what's going on and offer solutions for sure. So seeing her grow in power, seeing her grow in status here, and seeing her relish. I mean, Bix calls her out and says, you seem to be enjoying this. You seem to have a sick pleasure in seeing this. So there's further proof Fascism knows no fucking gender, ladies and gentlemen. It just wants to control, dehumanize, and turn you into a tool that can be used by them to keep themselves in power and to keep the machine running. So you go, oh, well, the trains ran on time when they were in power. Yeah, but you didn't see how they were making the trains run on time just for your fucking pleasure. So it's these kinds of things that are coming through that I think are political. I think they're a genius, and I think they are ballsy and gutsy for Star Wars to allow a series like this to exist amongst all the pew 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 Star Wars, which I love for what it is. But this is my kind of Star Wars. I like to see the gritty underbelly of what the reality of what it would be like to have a world like this and live in a world like this, which sadly we might not be too far away from. Anyway, let's move on to another part of this, and let's deal with Mon Mothma here, another storyline in this episode. We see her in the Senate. She's opposing the Emperor's new public safety regulation. Some of the senators are fighting back here. We see some of them turning off their lights, maybe as a no vote or as I don't want to listen vote. But eventually she gets drowned out. She gets in her car. You can tell that she's frustrated by the whole experience because she's losing power in the Senate, it seems like, against the Empire and the Emperor. Her driver tells her that her cousin has arrived at her residence. She walks in and Vel is there. So Vel is related to Mon Mothma. I thought it was Luthen Rail. No, it was actually Mon Mothma that she's related to. That's the rich family that she's run away from. So we find out that they are both aware of each other. They're both part of the rebellion. They both know they're part of the rebellion. They go back and forth having conversations. We see Leda come in and she's got her, or Leda's there with Vel, but we see Leda come in later with that dress, and she's very happy about the dress and all of that. We cut to them eating later with Perrin there and Leda, and he's asking about Vel getting married and saying, well, you know, you better find a widower because no one who's your age who hasn't been married is around. There's no men like that around. And Vel kind of scoffs and says she's not really looking for that. And then says, yeah, all the good ones are taken, with a little smirk from Mon Mothma for sure. So they both understand what a fop of a man Perrin is. He mentions Tay Kolma, and Leda responds with some shot about Tay being her Mon Mothma's old boyfriend, her mom's old boyfriend. And Mon Mothma immediately goes after Perrin for saying, did you give her that information? And she's like, yeah, it was in grade school, Mon Mothma said, to kind of blow it off there for sure. And then Perrin says to Vel, I hope she hasn't gotten political. All the interesting people are getting very tedious these days. I think it's genius. What a great subtle shot that Star Wars is, or at least the series is, taking at the people who are out there in our world today who are like, oh God, are you political? Why is everything about politics? Politics is important because it's going to affect your life, and especially the battle that's going out in our world right now. And I think this show is essentially taking a side, just like we see Vel and Mon Mothma discuss about taking a side in this fight against the Empire. They are taking a side. When they talk about Tay Kolma, Mon Mothma, and Vel encourages her, as I said, but they talk about the idea of Vel going back to Chandrila and acting like a spoiled rich girl for a while to kind of throw the scent off of her. And then Tay Kolma and Mon Mothma later have a conversation about this 400,000 that is missing from her account and how to cover for it. And we hear that she needs a loan, according to Tay, and she needs a loan from a Chandrilan with treasury relationships and a huge business ledger. So it's too overwhelming for anyone to kind of break down and explore all this. It's too time consuming, so they won't bother with it. So essentially providing a shield and cover for Mon Mothma. We hear about Davo Skulden, who Mon Mothma says he's a thug and wonders what the cost of having him involved will be. Tay says he doesn't know what the cost is, but he says that he wants to meet her on Coruscant. And she does not like that idea at all. I love this. A new character being brought into this here. And Mon Mothma having to realize, you can't run a rebellion. You can't be in charge of a rebellion without also having to deal with some unsavory people just to get the goals done. So we're seeing that here, her realizing the truth of it all and her chase. So as much as we're going with this journey of Cassian becoming a rebel, we're also seeing the progression of Mon Mothma as to lead the rebellion, seeing what it takes, seeing what deals you have to make, seeing the people you have to kind of quote unquote be in bed with in order to make this stuff happen. So I like that the show is not pulling punches on that either, in showing you the reality of that as well. And let's get to our last story down here, and that's Cyril Karn. I mean, we get his mom snooping through his room, his mom, questioning him about him coming home late, getting up early, changing his hair, changing his outfit. And we find out that she's been searching his room and looking in his special box. I think that's what he says, his private box. Sorry, his private box. And she says she's just been cleaning up, but he knows that she's been looking in there. And what do you think's in his private box? What, like a MAGA hat, the Imperial version of a MAGA hat, maybe some Kanye music, maybe some what else? Some pictures of Deidre Miro, and with himself pasted next to her as if they're a couple already. And probably some pictures of Andor with like X's for eyes. What do you think? Let me know down there what you think's in the private box. But she talks about all she did for him and how she dealt with his neglect and how she didn't wither and break because of his neglect. So you can tell like this is a place he wants to get the hell out of. He says he's been promoted. She smiles, goes and sits next to him, says, "Oh, I knew they'd recognize your promise." So completely changing her tune there. Later, he is at the ISB. Let's get into this scene because I saw some people tweeting about it. Some of my female colleagues tweeting about the stalking situation here, and certainly it is a bit. It's quite unsettling. He stalks Deidre, waits for her, and they have a tense exchange about his feeling that he is meant to be important. That she, in their conversation, which she says was not a conversation, I was questioning you, I was interrogating. It was not a conversation. So in his mind, he's fabricated this idea that him and her are on the same level. They have the same instincts, same desires. Now, he's not wrong that they both think they're special, therefore deserve to be in charge of things. That's what motivated him to go after Cassian for sure in the first first 3 episodes of this series. But Deidre has used her motivation to move up the chain of the Empire. He's counting fuel. There's the difference. He wants to leapfrog to that place that Deidre is out at because of his desire and belief in himself. He even grabs her arm when she tries to walk away, which is a real telling moment, right? He grabs her arm, which is I was like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And she says to him, "Look, I've given you enough chances. You do this again," because he admits to her that he's been waiting outside the ISB for the chance to see her a number of times, certainly stalking. And that is totally an unsettling thing to hear. You're going to be ending up in a cage in the Outer Rim if you do this again, Deidre says to him very clearly. So stands her ground, tells him what's up, but then she doesn't get him arrested. She doesn't get him in trouble. So I wonder in my own mind if she's just being nice, and women certainly can speak to that they have to get themselves out of a situation with a man here, but she's growing in power and she certainly has no problem commanding her space and commanding the people around her. So I want, and he's a way less of she's a superior to him by many, many ranks. So she could easily get him arrested and put him away. So what is it about their interaction that doesn't cause her to have him arrested? So I wonder where this is leading to. Of course, a lot of people speculating this could be a relationship down the road. Did he, by calling her out and calling out her need to be special, that mirrors his need to be special, did he essentially kind of break through that wall a little bit with his truth and realizing that about her? Is this going to be one of those rough, begrudging romances that pop up from two very unsettling people here in Star Wars? I don't know. Or is this just him stalking her and she's going to eventually break him down the road? Because when she pulls away and pushes past him after she threatens prison for him in the Outer Rim, she throws her elbow or her shoulder into him as a force of as a way to reclaim her strength, her authority, and her position in that situation. So to essentially knock him down a little bit physically. So I like that moment happens there. So yeah, just a lot of great stuff here to consume and enjoy and chew on and wonder about and speculate on as we go forward into the next episode. Toby Haynes doing a fantastic job. This is probably my favorite few episodes so far overall, but that also could be because all these other episodes that came before were really great and laying the groundwork for what we're getting now. Maybe we couldn't have gotten here without the incredible work from the other directors and the writers there and Tony Gilroy and how they constructed this world over these 12 episodes. But really enjoying what we've gotten over these last 2 to 3 episodes for sure. Well, what do you think? What do you think about what's going on here? Do you like it? Are you into it? Or is it giving you a little pause? Have you found some holes, some cracks in the plot, or some questions that you want to have answered? Let me know down in the comments section below. I always love reading y'all's comments and seeing how you view this thing and what you take away from it for sure, and what you experience here. So let me know about it down there in the comments section below. Hit a like on this video, share it on your social media. I always appreciate when you all do that because it lets people know the Outlaw Nation exists And maybe people want to head on over to the Outlaw Nation to try out our content. And hey, if you're visiting for the first time or maybe for the third or fourth time and you haven't subscribed that yet, please do me a favor, subscribe down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button so you see what we're dropping, all the content we do on here. We're just crossed 24,200. Want to get us to 25,000 as soon as possible. Hey, it's step by step, piece by piece. That's how it's got to be done on my end. So please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button. Also come and follow me on Twitch, the Outlaw Nation, all one word. All the stuff I got going on there on Twitch and the Patreon, patreon.com/John Rocha, where we talk about all this stuff twice a week here on Discord and on Zoom on camera. So, all right. Thank you all so much for watching the spoiler review. We'll have the Geek Buddy spoiler review coming up in the next couple of days or in the next day, depending on when we can record it here with our schedules. So look for that as well. All right. Y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. And I'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review video here on the Outlaw Nation.